But now I'm very pleased to introduce Howard. Howard Craft has been the club manager at Berkhamsted Golf Club since 2018, which sits in a 520-acre estate on Berkhamsted Common with a mixture of acid grassland, heathland and broadleaf woodland. So we've been working with the club since 2013 on a variety of projects, including pond management, botanic surveys and management plans. So Howard has a background in ecology and is a passionate advocate of conservation and the role that golf courses can play within that. So I won't say any more. I will hand you straight over to Howard.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Good afternoon, everybody. Have I got a clicker? There we go. Right. So thank you very much for inviting me here to speak. I will aim to give you a whistle-stop tour of Berkhamsted Golf Club, a little bit of Berkhamsted Common, a bit about what we do, what we want to do in the future, how the Wildlife Trust fits in with that, and what a valuable partner they are to us as a golf club. So, Berkhamsted Golf Club was formed in 1890. So we are I think the joint oldest golf club in Hertfordshire. Golf has been played on the Common since the 1880s, so there's 140 years that people have been playing golf on this piece of land. It's a member-owned club, so we are a not-for-profit organisation. Any surplus, I can't use the word profit, any surplus we use is reinvested back into the club. And because it's a member-owned club and we're so proud of our heritage, we do take a very, very long-term view on things. So the club purchased 500 acres in 1923 from the estate of Lord Brownlow, which is Ashridge House and the Ashridge Estate. And then we purchased another 20 acres in about 2000. So only about a third of our land is actually golf course. And so we have a second company, which is Berkhamsted Golf Club Trustee Limited, and they are responsible for looking after our non-golfing land of about 350 odd acres or so. And because it's so common, we are bound by Commons bylaws. So we have an obligation to provide, I think the term is air and exercise, for a local population to enjoy the Common, and we take that matter very seriously. And just as we touched on COVID, we saw on a local scale an enormous, increase in activity on the Common of cyclists, dog walkers, families out walking, picnicking on our greens, etc., etc. And first and foremost, actually, the public are incredibly respectful of the land that they're on, actually, and it was a big thing for me that they could actually enjoy that piece of land because it is beautiful. So the trustees have. This is our land here on the map here. So you can see the highlighted area is the golf course. Now I have my youngest son is 9 years old and he's obsessed with dinosaurs. Now I can't. All I can see is dinosaur now. So, but all the land that's not highlighted is effectively our land that we look after for nature, basically. So we have a high-level stewardship scheme from Natural England that allows us the grants to look after this. And we are trying to do various things on actually reversing succession, actually trying to maintain acid grassland, maintain heathland, and dare I say, remove some woodland. But we're doing this with a genuine strategic goals, in mind for it. I've put this in there, and if I get heckled, I'm very, very sorry. I think it's the largest area of heathland in Hertfordshire, and I'm going to pause for dramatic effect if anybody says it's not, but we believe it is, and we're very proud of that. We have a genuine feeling of a need to be custodians of that land. And as many people are aware, deciduous trees, and a lot of our trees are secondary woodland. A lot of them are 70 to 80 years old. And due to the leaf litter rotting down, et cetera, fertility levels, as I'm sure you're aware, don't really mix that well with heather and heathland. So we have to do a lot of management on the Common. And when I say the Common, I mean golf course and non-golfing land, because we do tend to manage them on a very similar process each year. I'll go a little bit through the history of the Common, and you can see a couple of pictures that were taken from various places, and you can see how the Common has changed over the last 50, 60 years. But fundamentally, prior to World War II, we had a lot of commoners that had rights to graze animals, collect furs, collect firewood, et cetera, on the common, and they generally did do it. And after World War II, that all seemed to cease. And then if you couple that with myxomatosis came through the common pretty badly in the 50s, and still to this day we see almost no rabbit activity, a lot of deer activity, but not a lot of rabbit activity, then that grazing pressure just went, almost overnight. So, 10 years later, all those seedlings, and as I'm sure you're aware how quickly birch comes into heathlands, it went from, a lovely heath with a mixture of heather and gorse and acid grassland into what we see and some bits today. But we talk about recovery and reversing, we are slowly starting to reverse that over the last 20 years or so. So this picture, believe it or not, is almost taken from the same spot. So the 1950s is on the left there. So you can see there how little trees there were, which are basically hawthorns. And there was a few copses of kind of beech trees that were planted in the 1860s. And on the right, 50 years later, is what you saw. So when I get challenged and shouted at for not planting trees, you don't need to plant trees, clearly, do you? Because nature will do it quite happily for you, and you will end up in that situation very quickly. And that's what happened to the club. And so, one of the things I'll come on to later, and that I've generally wrestled with, is it too far gone? Can I actually get it back? Or do I just accept it's woodland now? And those of you who know about succession, and I worked at College Lake after I finished university, and Graham Atkins, who was the guy I worked with for many years, and he was absolutely obsessed with succession and reversing succession. We are effectively trying to keep heathland where it doesn't really want to be heathland, it wants to go into woodland. And so there's a moral challenge to yourself there to say, do I actually let nature take its course and turn it into woodland, or do I try to actually keep it as heathland? And Tim Hill and I have had many discussions over that over the past few years. Here's another one again. So this is actually looking out over to Berkhamsted, and you used to be able to see right into the town. And that's 40 years later. Believe it or not, that genuinely, it's slightly further on the left on the fairway, but that genuinely is the same view down there. It's better now because we've taken a lot of trees out there. So coming on to woodland management, the club was involved in a woodland grant scheme in the mid-late 90s on the common to take out something like 10,000 trees off the common. And then they started it, and we actually ended up getting quite a lot of vandalism, actually, in terms of people getting very grumpy about chopping trees down. And despite all the public consultation and exists, that the club actually decided to back off in the end and abandon it, which was sad. But we're actually in the process of hopefully starting to have those conversations again with the Forestry Commission and Natural England to potentially look at that again and actually start up. But we'll see. I appreciate it's a big decision to make, but it's one I think that we need to not necessarily shy away from making. So we accept we're probably never going to get back to those 1950s images there, certainly in the next 10 years or so. But, we are trying to strike a balance between heathland, acid grassland and woodland. And because of the way the common is, the golf club genuinely seamlessly moves into the non-golfing land. And so we have one habitat management plan for the whole 500 acres. It's not kind of this is what we do on the golf course. And by the way, we don't do any of that. We do this now on the non-golfing land. It's just one plan that does it all. So some of the things that the club has also tried to put in place in terms of the building blocks of this is that we have pillars within our club of obviously our members, because we are a member-owned club. The golf course is our number one priority. Of course, it has to be. We're still a golf club. But we've put sustainability in there as a pillar of our club, and we've got a sustainability committee. We've got a sustainability champion there that works with me and other volunteers. Because they're passionate about this, and one of our members is actually sat in the audience here, and he chairs our trustee limited company that, again, of a dedicated band of volunteers that do this because they're passionate about the common, they're passionate about conservation. In terms of conservation and what we do with the Wildlife Trust, as we talked about, we've done it with the woodland. We've done a pond management plan in 2019. We've done a botanical survey in 2018. And we've done a habitat management plan in 2020. And this is trying to get that strategic view in place over the next 10, 20 years of what we're going to do to the common to try to manage it in a sympathetic manner and try to achieve our goals for that. So you may ask the question, why do we do this then? I genuinely ask myself this actually sometimes, but we do this because There is a moral obligation on us. There's a moral obligation to use as custodian of the land. I'm a big believer that actually if you do sensitive management correctly, you can benefit the golf course. Now, golf is going through a massive transition in terms of what pesticides and legislation and what is allowed to do and not to do. So we're having to manage golf courses with less inputs, basically. So therefore, heathland golf on fine bent fescue turf is beautiful. But in order to do that, you need less trees, you need air, you need light, you need air movement through there to dry the turf out. But if we do that, then we actually push the woodland back, we create more heathland, we create more acid grassland and more gorse, and actually everyone plays a better round of golf in a much more enjoyable setting with better performing turf, and we provided more space for nature. And so what do we do with the Wildlife Trust? And what does the Wildlife Trust do for us? Without trying to sound like a kind of a Monty Python-esque, what has the Wildlife Trust ever done for us? There's a few reasons why they work for me, is that when you're bringing in a consultant, and this is what I see as a consultancy, you're buying ideas and you're buying challenge as well. And Tim and I have had a few arguments over the last few years, particularly when it comes to ash dieback, where Tim has challenged what we've been doing or not been doing, and doesn't agree with our management practices. And I like that. That's what I want. I want someone to go, why are you doing it that way? So I prefer being challenged on those things. It's important for me to have people that take a more regional, global view over things, and that helps to put context to what we're trying to do. And they are obviously, my knowledge, I finished university sadly quite a few years ago, and therefore my knowledge is not quite so up to date, so having a Wildlife Trust involved is important for me. And it's the objectivity. Golf clubs run by members, owned by members, it's subjective, it's passionate, I don't like that, I want that tree kept there, I always hit that tree off the fall, so keep that tree there or get rid of it. So taking a wildlife trust in there removes that subjectivity out of it and keeps the advice nice and objective. So some of the future things or current things we're doing, we just put beehives on our common. We're doing more heath and regeneration. Our heather is actually recovering gradually on its own, without too much intervention, which is quite nice to see. Some of the grander ones, grazing of cattle. So we're in the process of hopefully doing a trial this year to graze cattle. There's common land, so you can't fence it, but technology is caught up now, so you can put collars on them and use GPS and apps, et cetera, et cetera. So we're hopefully going to do a trial. And for me, it's quite important for me to create dynamism within a habitat and create, make a mess, actually create some bare earth, et cetera, et cetera. So I want the cattle to make a mess. And one of the things that golf is struggling with is water and lack of water availability. And that is going to become a massive deal because something like 66% of golf clubs still use mains water for irrigation, which is wrong. And golf as a sport is an enormous use of water compared to anything else. So we are, as an industry, we're facing a massive headache in the next 5 to 10 years of what do we do with water. So we need to build storage. So how do we build water storage on site that still benefits wildlife? Because normally you would build a butyl-lined reservoir, which is going to be pretty sterile. So we're looking at how can we create that lined reservoir, but create a wetland habitat that actually is going to then benefit wildlife as well. So, and that's what we're working on as we speak at the moment. So I think I'm pretty much done now, and Emma can stop shouting at me and waving her hands at me because I've overrun. So I think if I could summarize, as a business, as a business, and we're there to make a surplus and run our business effectively, it can go hand in hand with biodiversity as long as you think about it carefully. And the Wildlife Trust are always a very valuable resource for me to call upon because of the advice they give. Thank you.